The president ordered the strike. Is that correct?
Which strike are you referring to?
The strike on Iran, the war that we're in.
Oh, of course. I mean,
Okay.
he's the commander-in-chief.
So
He's
it
made
sounds like
the calls.
It sounds like you're blaming Daddy for the mess we're in, and I don't think he's going to be particularly happy with you.
I see
Let's
what you're trying to
transition-
do. There's no daylight in this administration on this
Mr. Secretary, I'm
campaign,
asking
and I'm
the
happy
questions. You've been
to
admonished
stand
for this
shoulder to shoulder
before.
with this administration.
Welcome back to Freedom Forge. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe because we break down what's really happening in Washington without the spin, without the filters, and without the mainstream media telling you what to think. Today, we're reacting to a heated Senate hearing that dives straight into one of the most serious issues any country can face: war, energy, and leadership. The exchange centers around U.S. involvement in a conflict with Iran, rising oil prices, and whether the administration truly understood the consequences of its decisions. This is not just political theater. This is about real-world impact, global stability, economic pressure, and American lives on the line.
This is Mr. Vindman from Virginia for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Earlier, Secretary Hegseth, you talked about flexible realism. So let's see if we can figure out how much of it is realistic and how much of it is just flexible. Secretary Hegseth, last year I asked you some questions about Indo-PACOM and threats in Europe, and you had a hard time answering those questions. I'm sure you prepped better this year, and I'm hoping you can answer some of these basic questions since now we are at war. Do you know what the price of oil is today?
I don't know where it's gone as this
Within a
time
few
of this
bucks.
hearing, but roughly $100 a barrel.
It's actually closer to 120, 117.
Well, it depends on the index you're looking at.
I'm looking at Brent. Do you know what the price was the day before of Brent, the day before we went to war?
It was certainly lower. You understand you're taking some economic risk. But I would
Yep,
note
a lot lower.
the energy
Thank you for
dominance
answering
this
my
president
question.
has
Let me-
unleashed
let
has
me
put us
get
in an
to
incredible
my question.
position.
Thank you. So it's $72, and so now we have a 62% increase. By the way, the department obviously will be paying those extra fuel costs. That's going to be not insignificant, but so will the American people. Now, at its narrowest point, how wide is the Strait of Hormuz?
I think it's about 12 miles, but I'd have to check.
It's 24 miles, but 12 miles is actually the relevant number because that's the navigable channel.
That's
So
the International Water Navigable Channel point.
And do you know how many barrels of oil transited the Strait of Hormuz each day before the war started?
I don't know the exact number, but you're looking at over 100 oil tankers usually transited a day, or 120 a day would transport the strait.
Yeah, and so 20 million barrels a day, and right now they're at an 81% reduction. So it sounds like you've done your homework. You're tracking pretty well what the strategic situation is. So a couple of questions. Were you aware that if we struck Iran, that they would most likely close the Strait of Hormuz?
Of course, our department was prepared and planning for every possible contingency, being front and center as something they may do in a desperate state to attempt to
Which is what they've
facilitate
done,
some kind of control.
and I appreciate that. And earlier you told Mr. Moulton that this department has looked at all aspects of the risk and that the president got every possible perspective. And then recently you just said that the president did understand the risks and had the courage to undertake the endeavor nonetheless, and that's leadership, or words to that effect, pretty close. And so I just want to kind of give you the state of play right now. It's been 2 months of war. We have hopes for a resolution, but the war continues, really. Iran has closed the strait, and we've now gone in and blockaded their ports. 1/5 of the world's oil is unable to transit the strait, and the American people and the department are paying significantly more. And you also said that this is what the American people actually voted for. But actually, the American people voted for a promise not to get into Middle Eastern wars. And they voted for lower prices. And this is the exact opposite of what they got. So let me ask you this. The president ordered the strike, is that correct?
The president's been saying for over 30 years that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. So he's been
got it.
very clear as a
We're
position
talking
when
about
the American people voted for President Trump overwhelmingly. They voted
Secretary,
for that
I got
position.
that, but the president ordered the strike, is that correct?
Which strike are you referring to?
The strike on Iran, the war that we're in.
Oh, of course. I mean,
Okay.
he's the commander-in-chief.
So
He's
it
made
sounds
the
like
calls.
It sounds like you're blaming Daddy for the mess we're in, and I don't think he's going to be particularly happy with you.
I see what you're trying to do. There's no daylight in this administration on
Mr.
this
Secretary, I'm
campaign,
asking
and
you
I'm happy
questions. You've been
to
admonished
stand
for this
shoulder to shoulder
before.
with this administration.
Reclaiming my time. So let's shift gears. Last time we were here, I asked you if you'd apologize to the mother of an F-18 pilot whose son you endangered for sharing classified information on a signal chat. You refused. On March 1st, 6 Army soldiers, including a constituent of mine, were killed by an Iranian drone strike. Do you take any responsibility for those deaths?
I was there at Dover when they came back. Of course, I take
So was I.
responsibility for every aspect
Well,
of
I
this
appreciate
mission.
that, because you also complained about the fact that tragic things happen. The news makes it front-page news. The press only wants to make the president look bad. Is it about the soldiers, or is it about the president looking bad?
It's not just the president who wants, or the media that wants to make him look bad. It's you.
It's actually about the soldiers, and it's frankly reprehensible that you would make that statement. And so, Truman had a sign on his desk that said, "The buck stops here." And this
The gentleman's time has
administration, it's
expired. The
about
chair now
passing the buck.
recognizes Mr. Van.
Now let's get into it. What stood out immediately in this hearing is how the questioning senator tried to paint a picture of chaos and incompetence, pushing the idea that the administration walked blindly into a war without understanding the economic and strategic consequences. He brings up oil prices, the Strait of Hormuz, and the global energy supply chain, trying to corner the defense secretary into admitting failure. But here's where we need to separate political performance from actual leadership. Because what you're watching isn't just a search for truth, it's a calculated attempt to frame the narrative. The senator points out that oil prices jumped from around $72 to over $117 per barrel, blaming the conflict for the spike. And yes, that's a serious issue. Higher oil prices affect everything, from transportation to food costs. But what's missing from that argument is context. The Middle East has always been a volatile region. The idea that confronting a hostile regime like Iran comes without consequences is just naive. Leadership isn't about avoiding every possible risk. It's about deciding which risks are worth taking. And that brings us to the core of the issue: Iran and nuclear weapons. The defense secretary makes it clear that this administration, and specifically the president, has held a consistent position for decades. Iran cannot be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon. That's not new. That's not sudden. That's a long-standing red line. So when the senator tries to frame this as some kind of betrayal of the American people, saying voters wanted no Middle Eastern wars, that's only half the story. The American people also expect security. They expect strength. And they expect their leaders to act when threats become real. Now let's talk about the Strait of Hormuz, because this is where things get serious. About 20 million barrels of oil pass through that narrow channel every single day. When that gets disrupted, the entire world feels it. The senator highlights that there's been an 81% reduction in oil flow through the strait, which is massive. But again, what's the alternative? Allow a regime like Iran to operate unchecked, potentially gain nuclear capability, and then hold the entire region and global economy hostage permanently? That's not peace. That's surrender dressed up as diplomacy. What I find telling is how the defense secretary handled the pressure. He didn't deny the risks. He didn't pretend everything was perfect. He acknowledged that the department planned for contingencies, that they understood Iran might respond by closing the Strait of Hormuz. That's what preparedness looks like. Compare that to the tone of the questioning, which quickly shifts from policy to blame. At one point, the senator tries to pin responsibility for soldier deaths directly on the administration, referencing an Iranian drone strike that killed U.S. troops. Now, let's be clear, every loss of American life is tragic. Every single one. But using those moments as political ammunition in a hearing doesn't honor those soldiers. It turns their sacrifice into a talking point. The defense secretary's response was measured. He acknowledged responsibility. He showed that he had been there, that he had witnessed the cost firsthand. That's not the response of someone hiding from accountability. And then things really take a turn when the exchange becomes personal. Accusations fly, the tone sharpens, and suddenly it's less about policy and more about scoring points. That's the problem with these hearings today. Too often, they're not about solutions, they're about headlines. Here's the bottom line. America is in a position where every decision on the global stage carries consequences. You can't demand strength and then criticize every action that requires it. You can't call for deterrence and then complain when deterrence actually involves confrontation. What we're seeing here is a clash between two visions of leadership. One side believes in projecting strength, even if it comes with short-term costs. The other side focuses on those costs to argue that the strategy itself is flawed. But history has shown us something very clearly. Weakness invites aggression. If Iran believes the United States won't act, won't respond, won't draw a line, then the situation doesn't stabilize. It escalates in a much more dangerous way. So when you watch this hearing, don't just listen to the numbers or the emotional appeals. Look at the bigger picture. Ask yourself what kind of world you want the United States to operate in. A world where it leads with strength, or one where it hesitates and hopes for the best. Because hope is not a strategy. And that's why conversations like this matter. Not because politicians are arguing, but because the decisions behind those arguments shape the future of global security and the lives of everyday people. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure you like the video, subscribe to Freedom Forge, and stay tuned because we're going to keep cutting through the noise and giving you the real story behind the headlines.